Good evening. Welcome to the City Council, February 3rd, 2025 City Council meeting. If you could all please salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's on.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Can we roll call the members?
Roll call of the members. Councilor Agenzio?
Here.
Here. Councilor Cogliandro?
Here.
Here. Councilor Janino?
Here.
Here. Councilor Guarino-Sawaya?
Here.
Here. Councilor Hass?
Here.
Here. Councilor Jaramillo?
Here.
Here. Councilor Kelly?
Here.
Here. Councilor McKenna?
Here.
Here. Councilor Novoselsky?
Here.
Here. Councilor Zambudo?
Here.
Here. And Council President Silvestri?
Here.
Here. Quorum is present. Approval of the journal of the regular meeting of January 27th.
So move.
Calendar item number 3, motion presented by Councilor Agenzio that the City Council award certificates of commendation to the Revere Youth Cheerleading U12 team and their coaching staff in recognition of their second-place finish at the Nationals in Florida.
Councilor Agenzio.
Thank you. Just want to come up? Come on up. That's all right. We'll fit. Come on, girls.
I don't know. It's Aida.
Come on up.
Congratulations.
Are the coaches here? The coaches can come up. Yeah. You can go just a little further. You can start a second row. Come on in, start a second row. Come right down. Sideways. Come on in. Come right in. Okay. The City Council would like to take the opportunity to congratulate the Y12 cheerleading squad. They did a great job this season. They did so well. They were invited down to Florida to compete nationally, and they did an excellent job, and they got second place, so we'd like to congratulate them. Thank you very much. And I'll just read one of these, and then we'll hand them out. This is a certificate of commendation in acknowledgement of your commitment to developing and guiding young athletes by coaching the Revere Junior Patriots U12 cheerleaders and leading them to a second-place finish at the 2024 American Youth Cheerleading Championships in Naples, Florida. Special recognition is hereby accorded to Jessica Haggerty. We'll do the... Coach Emily Mullis.
Emily's not here.
Okay. Coach Isabella Dampierre. Here you go. Coach Danielle Greenman. There you go. And this is for the players. In acknowledgement of your outstanding athletic accomplishments as a member of the Revere Youth Patriots U12 cheerleading team in placing second at the 2024 American Youth Cheerleading Championships in Naples, Florida, special recognition is hereby accorded to Susan Aguilar. Nina Matno. Not here. Okay. Leah Kos. Naomi Freer. Maria Lucia Roberto. Leah Gomez. Kaylee Dolan. Juliana Clemens. Jaslyn Pineda. Isabella Callahan Brown. Everly Squillicotti. Where's Everly? There you go, Everly. Amelia Tecci. Ella Devedjic. Catalina Sanchez. Capria Cataldo. There you go, Capria. Ariana Enamorado. Hopefully I'm doing okay with the names. Annalie Bulis. She's not here. Okay. Alana Greenman. That's it. You all set? Okay. Did everyone get one? Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Do the coaches like to say anything, or anyone want to say anything? You don't have to, but you can. No, you're good. All right, thank you. Yeah. Oh, please, yes.
Can I get in there with them? Because they're tall.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good night.
Calendar item number 4, Lauren Buck, Chief of Public Health, and Mike Wells, Director of Municipal Inspections, will conduct a presentation on best practices for trash removal and storage and rodent control measures.
Thank you. Name and address for the record, please.
Sure. Lauren Buck, Director of Public Health, 281 Broadway. I'm here with Mike Wells, the Director of Inspectional Services, 281 Broadway. Our presentation tonight is on the City of Revere rodent control practices, our trash control program as well. This presentation we had help putting together with Nick Romano from the Director of 311 and Yvonne Vu, the data analyst. We also have a technician from B&B Pest over here, Louie, who can answer a lot of technical questions that you all might have, as he is the expert in the field. He can also speak to what happens specifically in Revere, because B&B is one of the main contracted exterminators that we use for our programs. And we don't have the slides, right? Okay, so, okay. Next, so next slide. Okay. So first we wanted to present you with a little bit of data. It can be a little bit hard to accurately measure how kind of the ebbs and flows of the rodent population, but one way we can measure what's going on is by the amount of calls that we get through 311. So this graph shows the number of rodent-related calls since 2018, year over year. So you can see 2018, we had 291, hanging out in the hundreds, 200s. And in 2024, you can see that we did have an increase of 468 calls related to rodents. I think we think there's a couple of reasons for this. In 2024, we were definitely having some problems with one of our contract exterminators that forced a lot of residents to call multiple times, which led to a change in our contracts for 2025. Yeah, and so we just wanted to give you an example of one of the data points that we do have, which is the number of calls coming in. And the next slide, it's just kind of an overview about why do we have rodents at all. So for centuries, rats have thrived in cities because of human behavior. We can focus on rodent control, not necessarily elimination. So we have the Norway rat here in our city. It's an invasive species that's typically found close to proximity, especially in cities. It's omnivorous and opportunistic. And there are two big factors that impact the rodent population in Revere: human behavior and our environment. Human behavior, so humans create lots of food for rodents. Rats adapt to human food sources at a remarkable rate, and if food is present, a single rat can give birth to up to 12 pups in a litter as often as every 6 weeks, which is a very, obviously that's a very high turnover. Also, our environment here in Revere, rats are found in many habitats, including marshland, and we are surrounded by marsh. They're nocturnal, they're excellent swimmers. And finally, one of the things that we talk with our exterminators a lot about is that one of the things that really helps cull rodent populations is if we have really good frosts during the winter that can kill a lot in the rodents in the ground. Over the last couple of winters, we haven't had so many good frosts. And so all of those things can contribute to rodents. And then finally, I just wanted to make a point that the national news has highlighted rodents in major cities across America recently. Which doesn't necessarily mean that Revere's rodent program is getting worse. It just puts it in the forefront of everyone's mind. But these are kind of the factors that are going on when we talk about rodents here in Revere. And then next, I'm going to pass it off to Mike, who's going to talk about our multiple trash programs, including residential and commercial.
Thanks, Laura, and good evening, councilors. As you know, in 2019, we adopted a new trash ordinance to help combat the rodent problem. The ordinance has several main components. First and foremost, every property was issued city-issued blue cards. If you're a single family, you received 1 card. If you're a 2-family, you received 2 cards. If you're a 3-family, you received 3 cards. Those property owners have the ability to purchase 1 additional card per dwelling. So a single family can purchase 1 more additional card, a 2-family can order 2, and there is a cost at $75 a piece. As you know, we have trash inspectors that are on the streets every morning starting at 7 o'clock. We have 2 full-time code enforcement inspectors doing residential trash, and we have 1 full-time code enforcement inspector that focuses directly on commercial and dumpsters. As we know, the rules of the trash in our city, when we adopted this ordinance, blue carts only, no non-city carts. Lids have to be completely closed. No trash on the ground, and no trash on top of the carts. okay? So those are the rules of the trash. If the carts are open, or the lids are open, a fine is issued. Under the ordinance, a trash fine is $25. Next slide.
It's actually one more.
This is our history from 2018 to December 31st of 2024. As you can see, violations issued. Roughly, we're looking at roughly 4,000 violations a year in our city for trash. That includes accumulation of litter, trash and debris, bulky items, rodent harborage, and unclean, unsanitary land, which is overgrowth and vegetation, which is also another cause for rodents. Next slide. These are real pictures of some of our properties. Most common issues with residential trash is overflowing, lids not closed, trash on the ground. We do not have all of our trash is free to our residents. There are no trash fees. So we don't have a pay to throw, or where some of our other surrounding cities, they have to buy bags to dispose of, additional trash. Next slide. Large buildings and commercial requirements. So we also have policies in place for larger residential buildings. Also, dumpsters are inspected on a daily basis. Fines are issued to those, fines, that money goes toward our rodent extermination program that we offer in the city. Also, commercial properties need to have an IPM, which is an integrated pest management plan, which can be reviewed. And retail and food businesses are required to provide a record of pest control measures. All food establishments and retail establishments are required to, by the sanitary code, be inspected at a minimum of every 30 days. So upon inspection of those establishments, the food inspector does request all of their monthly service reports. If we notice that there is an issue, if any business is having an issue, we do require them to increase their services. We've gone to 3 times a week for some establishments that have had issues in the past, but we can certainly increase it beyond that minimum of every 30 days. Next slide. These are dumpster violations. This past budget, we included a full-time dumpster inspector. So that is a new area of responsibility. We've had 3 inspectors in the past, but one of them now is just strictly on commercial dumpsters. So we have had an increase in violations issued for overflowing dumpsters. Next slide. Again, these are real pictures. Most common issues with large buildings or commercial lead to overflowing dumpsters, dumpsters that are broken, don't have lids, open holes, they rot out at the bottom, they're leaking, in dumpsters that don't have lids. All of our dumpsters, anytime an establishment changes hands, we do require them to enclose their dumpsters. A lot of them were kind of grandfathered in prior to that ordinance being established. So anytime something changes with the property owner, we do require them to have their dumpsters enclosed. And I'm going to pass it back off to Lauren.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about our private property or our resident program. This has been running since 2018. It's a program where residents can call 311 or go on our website and sign a waiver to have a contracted exterminator come to their house up to 6 times in a year. So 6 free visits by a contracted exterminator yearly. The visits include inspections, making sure that there are bait boxes there, refilling bait boxes, or doing other treatments, which I'm sure Louis could explain kind of what type of treatments that he does, but every visit can look somewhat different. This is a partnership between 311 and the Public Health Department, so we can also triage streets or neighborhoods with higher numbers of complaints, which we have done quite regularly over the last several years. We can do this by kind of essentially making a heat map of all the calls that are coming in and seeing where there's a lot of calls on a specific street or neighborhood. The program runs on a waiver system to ensure that homeowners are aware that the contracted exterminator will be visiting, and waivers must be renewed every 2 years. This is a change that we recently implemented, just to make sure that all homeowners are up to date and that they actually know what's going on. So obviously, this is a program that we put a lot of attention to, but there are some kinks in the system. So, all of our contracted exterminators have door knockers with our logos on them, and door knockers are supposed to be placed on all the doors after the service is performed. Sometimes they don't get placed, and so then the resident isn't exactly sure that the service was performed. When that happens, we do have, they can call 311 and we have a way to check in our system, but obviously that's not ideal for the resident. Another thing that kind of comes up a lot is this is not immediate relief. So we have a lot of waivers that come in, and it's kind of a routine weekly system that our contracted exterminator uses. And so potentially someone's calling in and they want someone to go out in the next hour, or in the next 24 hours, and we have to wait until the exterminator is in Revere on specific days. Another kind of potential issue to this program is there are some properties that might just need a higher level of service than the city can provide. They might need more than 6 visits. They might have to hire their own extermination service on top of that. And so obviously that's, not ideal. And then some properties, experience rodents and are calling us and saying that they're seeing rats or anything like that. But the true problem is a neighboring property who potentially doesn't know about the program, or potentially is maybe an absentee landlord or something like that. So the real issue is coming from the neighborhood, not necessarily their property. And next slide. So this is just some data we pulled about the number of waivers that we've had signed since 2018. Again, the program was started in 2018. The program was started in 2018, and you can see we had a huge number of waivers signed that year. Just a note about these numbers, 2018, 2019, 2020, 21, the waivers didn't have any expiration dates. So everyone that signed in 2018 was getting services all throughout those years, and that's why the numbers are so low of new waivers. In 2022, we revised our system just to make sure, this is kind of a way to make sure that, properties change hands, there's new landlords, there's new people sell homes and all that kind of stuff, and we just wanted to make sure that the current owner of the property was aware of that we were doing extermination services. And so we implemented a waiver program, a waiver that was good for 2 years, and so you'll see our numbers creep up. In 2024, we had 486 waivers signed. Mike and I have been talking about this data, and the other thing we wanted to point out is there's, why do we have more waivers 2023, 2024? Again, I think this is because we're making people re-sign every couple years, but also there has been some digging, some more construction potentially in these 2 years. And we've really tried to advertise this program a lot more, so it's just possible that people just know about the program more. We have flyers all over the city of Revere, our bulletin boards, we talk about it on Revere TV, and so we have done, in the last 2 years, a lot more advertising of the program. Next slide. I also just wanted to quickly mention some other property sets that you might be thinking about. Our schools do have a contract that they run for all of their school properties with B&B Pest. And then the public open spaces also get inspected and treated as needed 4 times a year with our contracted exterminators, which are either MD Weaver or B&B Pest. And then this is a slide, next slide. I'll quickly talk about this, but this is where I'm hoping if you have more specific questions about the environmental impacts, we'll bring Louis up here. But the type of rodenticide that is used is called a second-generation anticoagulant. And he can explain kind of why they use that and the different effects that come from that. There are other options on the market. I'm sure you heard about birth control or boxes that kind of zap and do different things, and why some of them are not as effective as potentially you're thinking, and some, all the reasons why they do what they do. And then finally, we've talked to B&B a lot about this over the last couple of years. You can buy rodenticide at Home Depot or Lowe's or anything, and there's no kind of regulations. And inappropriate use from people who aren't trained can also lead to potential negative impacts that when you're using a contracted exterminator aren't there. And so that is something that we wanted to point out when you're talking about the environmental impacts. And then our last 2 slides you can flip. So what can the public do? And then finally, we'll talk about what can the city do. So this is where we really want to talk about education. And so it's really just thinking about human behavior and the ways that we can prevent rodents from even, coming around your property at all. So our first big component here is removing food and water sources. So as Mike mentioned, we really want residents to only use city-issued trash barrels with secure lids. They keep them tightly closed. Clean your trash barrels. Don't leave food out for birds or wildlife. Bird feeders are a huge attraction for rodents. And then empty any sources of standing water. Again, trash needs really to be properly stored even on non-trash pickup days, and sealing entry points to any food source that they might get. No amount of bait box will stop a rodent if there is better human food close by. Rats will always choose that over what is in the bait boxes. Second, remove shelter sources, so trimming outdoor plants, removing trash and debris from your yard, storing boxes or debris off the ground, and inspecting the outside of your home regularly. Exterior clutter can be a huge harborage of rodents. And then finally, we just, again, want to educate about our rodent program. So you can request a rodent waiver for free extermination services, like I just mentioned. You can call 311, or we have a whole website dedicated to it, revere.org/rodents, to fill out a waiver. And a B&B pest will visit your property and treat whatever they see. And then finally, last slide, what can the city do? So, there's our program, our trash program, our rodent program. We want to make sure we continue this and do these programs really well. So we want to continue with trash inspections, but just know that when we do continue with trash inspections, fines might result, and fines are hopefully, Mike always tells me this about behavior change, and so we don't want anyone to continue to get fines. It's a way to help people remind them about the appropriate measures that you need to take with your trash. Obviously, continue with dumpster inspections and IPM checks, which would result with fines as well, and these would be on our commercial properties who potentially are having some changes of behavior that need to happen there. Obviously, we'll continue with our free rodent control program for our private properties, and we will continue with that program, and continue to refine it and make it better. And finally, increase education to residents, which is what we're here about a little, one of the reasons we're here, about the cause of rodents and the behavior changes that we need to make to help decrease with our problem. And that's the presentation, if there's any questions.
Thank you very much. Councilors?
Oh, sorry, one last thing. I'm going to pass around, we have our flyers and our informational pamphlets that help people learn about preventing rodents and the program as well, and just to give you an example of what's on our website and what's downstairs. Thank you.
Thank you. Great job, both of you. Councilor Hermio.
Thank you, Mr. President. Lauren, Mike, thank you so much for coming. I know we've had a few conversations over the last few weeks about this issue, and I just wanted to check in. I know you went over some additional strategies to deal with this, like birth control and all that stuff. In addition to those, is there anything you're seeing in other cities that is working that seems to be tracking down the rodent problems in their city and how they're implementing? So
maybe I'll have Louis come up and chat about what he sees going on in other places. A lot of cities try different things, and I the effectiveness is always dependent on what they're trying. I know Somerville, has tried the boxes that they zap so for lack of a better term, they zap the rodents, and one of the issues when you use boxes like that is that when they're full, they don't work until someone comes and cleans them out. So there's always kind of issues like that with other methods. But do you have anything you want to add to?
So, from what I'm seeing, most cities are taking the same kind of route you guys are taking, with kind of mixing, I don't want to call it blame, but helping the situation with the trash remediation and things like that. And that seems to be the most common problem when it comes to city rats. Because, like she said, they're Norway rats, and they come from underground, not up on the roofs or wire lines or anything like that. So they're currently always on the ground, scurrying around looking for a food source. And once they find it, once they find it, that's it. They're not leaving that situation. So most of the time you get a point A, point B, and everywhere in between gets the problem as well, because they're traveling those areas. And in a city like Revere, we have a lot of houses touching each other with connecting fences and yards that run along, sometimes vines and little gardens and things like that in those areas. They have a free runway in the dark, hidden away, where no one can see them, that they run through 4 or 5 people's yards. and 4 or 5 people are complaining about rats, but might see the same 4, 5, 6 rats, every other night, 2 nights a week, or whatever the deal is. And it really ups the situation to a more drastic measures being taken, when really the problem isn't in the middle, it's at both ends. So targeting those both ends are really what cities are really trying to do. Any contracted B&B or any other pest control company that works for a city or anywhere in the Massachusetts, New Hampshire, any big cities will have the same answer, and it's really that. It's really containing the food source and stopping that, because bait is only as effective as the hungry rat is. And if you can't find hungry rats, you have really, really low rates of effectiveness for the boxes that we do put out sometimes. And like we said in the slide, it's not as quick as people would like, Sometimes setting out a couple of traps can help a situation temporarily, but it's always going to be back in those areas because the food source is still in those spots. So other cities are doing what you guys are doing, and what they're doing with the trash, and imposing fines on what I like to call absentee landlords, and that's usually where it starts.
Thank you. Lauren, I noticed, and although $25 is a lot of money, but $25, how long has that been the fine, or maybe Mike, how long has that been the fine for
Since
this?
the ordinance was established in 2019.
And are any surrounding cities, have they increased fines, and have you, when you talk to your colleagues in other cities, has that changed human
I'm not
behavior?
sure what other cities and towns are fining for.
Okay.
Everybody has a different fining system. We fine under 40U, which is the state sanitary code. Some other cities and towns fine under 21D, which is city ordinances.
Are we limited to how much, is there like a ceiling on the fines?
No, that was established through the city council when the ordinance was adopted.
Okay, and have you seen human behavior change in other cities, I guess? Well, I guess has it changed here?
Well, listen, we drive through other cities and towns, and, our eyes are always focused. Our eyes are, I drive with my wife, and she gets aggravated because I'm always looking all over the place, right? So, again, as Lauren alluded to, it's human behavior. We need to change those behaviors. I always try to say it's not the point of the $25, it's the point of changing the behavior, right? So if you get one fine and you change that behavior, great, the fine worked, right? But if you get a fine week after week after week after week, which there are properties that do, and we go above that, the first fine is $25. We go above that, if it's more egregious, then we do up the fines, or if they are a frequent flyer, we up the fines as well.
Mr. Chairman, last question, sorry. And Mr. President, sorry. Are there any new technologies, either for our friends at BNB, or any new technologies that you're seeing emerge to deal with this, and to either curb human behavior or stop the reproduction of rats?
So there are a lot of things out there that are, I guess you could say, experimental still. They're still in that phase where it's only been, the past couple of years, they've been using different things like birth controls and, like she was saying, electric boxes that contain, the carcasses of the animals that are taken inside of it. So I don't think there's too much to go on yet because of, being a big city and not having a complete and utter, canvas over everything. It's hard to get all the stats and everything to make sure that those things are working. I can tell you that from personal experience, the birth control method doesn't seem to work. Just because if bait is slow, then this is even slower sometimes. And it's not effective most times because you only affect the female rats that come into contact with it. You're not forcing feeding by any means necessary. You're kind of just hoping it works. So traps obviously are the old school method and they work, but they're dirty, they're dead animals in them, and that's not fun for anybody. So unfortunately, not really. To answer your question easily, there's not much that is proven to work yet at a scale as big as a city. However, buildings, commercial buildings, private property, things like that, those can be helped by a pest control professional. When a problem is starting in an area or in a certain building, when we go to that building and we treat that building, I can guarantee you that the rats are gonna be gone from that area. Now, if a building, like he's saying, is a continuous problem and they're not doing anything about it and they're doing the minimum with we're coming out and, baiting the boxes on the outside, but they're contributing to the food source, I mean, there's only so much we can do, because the next step up, we really need qualified technicians, with certain licensing and certification to put some of the treatments down into the ground or in certain boxes and things like that. So, not really yet, but there's a lot of stuff out there right now, and we're just waiting for things to see how it works.
Council Cogliano.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you guys for your presentation. Mike, I just want to thank you. I text you frantically over the weekend. First of all, thank you for enduring me. And secondly, thank you for going out and handling an issue on a Sunday. I really appreciate that. And I really like the way that we're handling things. I know you and I have been working on that property since October. And I understand that we do have, issues with rodents, but it is good to give the property owners a chance to do the right thing and to make things good. And if it doesn't, we just saw firsthand, how we crack down on things. So I just want to say, great job. Thank you for everything you do.
Council McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you guys for being up here. Michael, I know I talk to you all the time about this. We just had an incident where someone called me and she had multiple fines, so we couldn't help her. But I just wanted to, a couple of things. Lou, is it Louis? Louis? Is the city using, I put 2 motions in to use less invasive rat poisoning so it wouldn't inhibit the wildlife. Is that happening or no?
So the second generation rodenticides that we use are on the market the lowest dosage of the chemical that poisons and stops the blood and thins the blood out and makes that happen in that situation with the non-coagulation. So unfortunately, what we're using now is pretty much the lowest dosage when it comes to how much we put in the boxes at a time. So the way you can regulate that is how much goes into the box at one time. So if you only put enough for the amount of traffic that is coming through, then you can regulate how much poison is being consumed. And at any rate, the poison to affect any kind of wildlife around isn't that big of a concern with the poison that we're using. If you could just excuse my language and the way I'm putting this, but a bird of prey would have to eat somewhere around 8 to 10 rats who are fully engorged with the poison that we use in order to be poisoned at all, that it would show up in the bloodstream. So that's just a small example of the low dosing of the poison that we use now.
That's great news, thank you, because before you were using rat poison that the rat would eat it and they would dehydrate and they would last for 3 days, and then a hawk would come and eat it and then he would be poisoned. So this is really good news. Have you ever tried dry ice?
So dry ice is partially effective. You need a couple of different things and factors to happen. You need burrowing or denning down in the ground to happen because you need somewhere to put the dry ice. Also, dry ice is very expensive and hard to procure for anybody, for that matter. It's only made in 2 places in Massachusetts right now. So to get it is expensive, and to do the treatment, it isn't as effective as an actual rat treatment would be. If we were to do a powder treatment for a den area with a lot of burrows, which is what we would do, that would be far quicker and actually a lot more effective when it comes to how many rats we can properly poison with it. So.
Thank you, and I just want to say congratulations, because I think education and educating the city is what we're supposed to do, what we have to do. And I go to other cities, and their trash barrels are completely over the top, and the lids are not down or anything. So congratulations for what you guys are doing, and great effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Novoselsky.
Thank you, Mr. President. is a great program. I'm glad we're doing it. And, Mike and Louis and Lauren, it's great that you came up tonight to let the public know what's going on, because this has never been done before, like this. But a couple of questions I have. What makes someone, a homeowner, eligible for a waiver, that they can get free rodent control?
You just have to be the homeowner, the owner of the property.
No matter the size of the house?
Oh, 6 units or less. Oh, sorry, yeah, 6 units or less.
Six or less?
If it's more than 6 units, it's considered commercial property, right?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, cool. And as far as the dumpsters are concerned, Mike, if I remember correctly, they're supposed to be cleaned out every 3 months if they have one in a commercial place.
Yeah.
Is there someone that checks that to see if it's really happening?
It's difficult. It's a difficult task, especially for the companies to empty them and have somebody there to be able to clean them out. So, obviously the springtime is a little bit easier for those types of inspections. And now that we have our new dumpster inspector in place, we will certainly ramp up, the sanitation around. It's not just, stuff that's overflowing, but a lot of it is trash and debris and all those dumpster juices all over the ground that attract the rodents as well. So
Okay.
power washing of the dumpster pad, absolutely.
And we should remind people, too, that they have to clean out their trash barrels, the
Right.
blue ones and the brown ones, the
Yep.
recycle ones, to make sure that's good. You give out 6 times a year. Is that sufficient to cover a rodent problem every 2 months? Or is there a time of year that it should be concentrated on?
So, us as a company, when we do a rodent control for a private or commercial building, we offer the 3-month warranty that goes with it. So, yeah, I would say, 6 times is a good amount of time to go back, reassess, open up everything, see what's going on, how things have been, talking to the, resident or whoever's there at the time, all those things. But yeah, six times is definitely enough
And that's
to
year-round?
assess.
That's year-round,
For 1 year, yeah. So,
for 1 year?
So as part of the waiver, you can get 6 free treatments for 1 year. The waiver is good for 2 years, so the next year, the property would also get another 6 treatments if they needed it.
So they get 2 years out of the waiver?
Yes.
Okay. Mike, what happens, and I get this a lot, when someone will come by, open up the blue barrel and put their own trash on top of it, and that person gets fined? What do we do in a case like that?
Luckily, everybody has a Ring doorbell today. They email us the videos, they can send them to us. And if we see that happen, we take we'll void the fine. If we pull up the address and they have a laundry list, then, we'll make them go through the appeal process. But we don't want to put anybody through that we don't want to inconvenience anybody. So a lot of times they'll come in with that evidence and we'll help them out.
Okay. The last issue, and I get a lot of this. People get a fine because their cover was open 1 inch.
1 inch, 10 inches, it's all the same.
Wow.
I get that.
Right.
People are saying, isn't there any kind of flexibility or something like that?
They have the ability every violation can be appealed within 21 days of receiving it. They can do that in the writing process, or they can come to a hearing, scheduled hearing. And then they can go before the hearings officer will determine the outcome of the appeal.
Thank you for that information. Great job.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Greeno-Swire.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Lauren, for coming here, and thank you, Louis. This presentation was excellent because there's a lot of residents that don't know what the procedure is, and now that they're watching it, they can understand it a little bit better. I do have a question about the violation that, how Ira just said, Council Novoselsky just said, if it's open 1 inch. Well, what if they put a rock on it? Because I know they got a ticket for putting a rock on top to hold it down. That happened in Ward 5. So they had put a rock on top of it to keep it shut. And I don't know what happened, but they did get a violation because there was a rock on top of the barrel.
Maybe it was a boulder, I'm not sure, but I have to see it.
And then my other question is, you know how you and I have been working together with the rats in Ward 5 and stuff. When there are restaurants, businesses, and buildings that are in violation, is the ticket price the same as what you would give the residential neighborhood?
No, dumpsters, depending on the severity, it go up to a $250 fine.
And what happens if they're constant abusers?
They keep getting fines.
Okay, and there's nothing else that we can do to make it stop?
We-
Because
the-
there
the
are.
goal is for the property owner to address the issue. You know, sometimes if we have contact information, I try to reach out as much as I possibly can to property owners to address the issues. But there are just some properties we don't have contact info for. So one of the things I've been doing lately is, you know, since our 40U violations are able to be paid online now for the past year and a half or so, we have contact information. So I can go into that system and get the email address of the property owner and send them an email to get in touch with us to talk about the problem at their property. And that does work.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Hass.
Thank you, Mr. President. Guys, thanks so much for being here and for that presentation. I know someone who used the program, and it seems to have had a good effect so far. I will say I've seen rats in my neighborhood, in my yard on Fenley Street, which I've never seen before. And I know, Mike, you and I talked a lot about the neighborhood. We had the rooster issue. There are rabbits. There's a coyote behind me now. I had a raccoon living in my house. So it's almost like they're taking over. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the neighboring property aspect of this. I've seen neighbors, you know, leave a bagel on a fence post, a half-eaten sandwich or something, you know, feeding the birds. I know that's a huge issue. In that scenario, what can a neighbor who's following the rules, what can they do? Can they call the inspections department?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we send letters out to property owners to get in touch with us. You know, we have a good rate of, you know, them getting in touch with us. Some we don't. We have to send a second letter. But, you know, bird feeders are a problem. You know, people that like to feed the squirrels and, you know, throw stuff out there, you know, those are contributing factors as well. So we do have a bird feeder ordinance, you know, that might want to be reviewed at some point again. But it's, they are definitely contributors.
And I know the outreach has been great. I know people have seen the flyers down the wellness center and on Facebook and things like that.
One of the
So-
other things Lauren and I had talked about recently as well with the liaisons is in a new homeowner packet. So when a property changes, you know, they'll get some information about kind of the city and stuff, and putting something in there about the rules of the trash and proper storage and stuff. So
Perfect. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Janino.
Thank you guys for being here. I had a question. Washington Avenue last year, when they were doing the sidewalks over, we had a storm come in and new construction being done at the same time. Are we doing anything proactive in a case like that? Because I noticed right after that storm came in, I got probably about 4 or 5 phone calls on the area. Are we just waiting on being reactive on the calls coming in and then going out?
with the construction on the roads, DPW handles all that stuff. So we're not even included in any of that. So if there is road construction, DPW is responsible for the outside contractors doing the baiting.
Yeah, because I know when the people called up, you guys went out and took care of it for me, or for them, and it was satisfactory what you guys did.
Yeah.
Second thing was the dumpsters. I don't know who you hired, but he's doing a good job at it.
They are.
Because I've had 2 phone calls on dumpsters in the area, and they went way down.
Yeah.
And then also with the exterminator, identifying the difference between the rodents and the rabbits and squirrels digging holes. Because other calls, people calling me up saying, I got rats all over the place, my neighbor's rats are coming over here, and it was determined to be the rabbits digging the holes.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Zambudo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for your presentation. Only recently, I've got calls from my neighbors. One across the street from me said, "We have a rodent problem." I said, "Not that I know of, but evidently we do." I think everybody does, but I haven't seen any, so this presentation helps a lot because it tells people, and most people are good people, and they don't make these mistakes on purpose, and they just don't know any better. And especially some of our new neighbors don't know any better. And when I say that, I'm accused of being a racist, but I'm not, I promise. But the bottom line is that education is the key, and this presentation, I really think, helped a lot of people, and I liked your answer to my colleague to my right, that 1 inch is just as bad as 6 inches. If you've got an opening for the mouse or rats to get in, they're going to get in. If it's closed, they're not going to get in. It's as simple as that. And I've had occasion where the raccoons got in the barrel, and they opened the barrel. Now I have a bungee cord, so I hook it on it so that they don't. So, I mean, they're very resourceful, and so this education is very good, and I really appreciate your effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Cogliandro.
Thank you for the leeway, Mr. President. Through you to the pest control specialist. A couple, 2-3 months ago, we had an issue with the baiting of the rats. The rats would eat the bait, and then it would go up the food chain. Maybe a bird would swoop down and eat the rat, and then a dog would eat the bird, and they were all dying. How do you combat something like that from happening?
So, I would like to think that most pest control professionals aren't to blame for that problem. I would like to point out that a lot of people do use Home Depot, Lowe's brand stuff, and also a lot of the stuff that we do carry and have control over, you can purchase for your own residential house online. All right, so there are a lot of stuff you can purchase. There are some stuff, obviously, that's restricted, and the use of it needs a special license and certifications and so on and so forth, but improper use is more to blame than the proper use of it. Just like I said earlier, the amount of poison that you feed to a rodent determines on how quick or fast the rodent will perish from it. So using more does take care of the problem quicker, but it also leads to rats who are full of it and only eating the poison. And if you over poison, you are doing just that to the whole environment. However, like I said, the stuff that we use is a 0.5% of the poison is in the entire product. And each product is carefully determined for how many fit in each box and how many are targeted for each rodent, per block. I like to harp back, but yeah, I think the professional part needs to be looked at a lot closer, because I think we do a good job at it, but it gets taken out of our hands a lot of times, and we get the blame for it, the same as a home contractor would get the blame for someone else's finish work or something like that. So yeah, when we do a job, we do it the right way. We try to make it as easy as possible, and when we explain it to a client or a residential place, we make sure that we tell them, this is how we do it, this is how long it's going to take. It's not a quick turnover. We usually give a 2 to 3 week period where things can slow down because of the fact that we're not trying to over poison the whole system, but just rather whatever's visiting your property.
Thank you. And if I may, just one more question. Could you just explain briefly, I know years ago we used to use rodenticide. It was designed to dehydrate the rodent and make them leave the property, clean down all the water sources. Is it still the same, or is something similar?
No, we use an anticoagulant base now. So essentially, it thins the blood from inside and bleeds from the inside. I don't want to, this isn't, it internally bleeds without it knowing, okay? So it's essentially a warfarin based. So the chemicals that are combined in the poison is something like a blood thinner pill would be for somebody who has high blood pressure. So we're just administering a little bit more than they would normally need, and in a timely manner so that it does do its job fast enough.
Thank you very much.
You got it.
Thank you, Louis. Council Guarino Swire.
Thank you, Mr. President, for the leeway. Lauren, just a quick question. One of the residents just messaged me. They wanted to know, is this new of it being a 2-year waiver? Because it was always every year, right?
Yeah, we changed it to a 2-year waiver based on actually some guidance from B&B. Just, it seems like a good enough time where you can be pretty sure that the property is still in the same hands. But it also, you know, whenever you put limits on a waiver, you run the risk of like less people signing it every
Yeah.
year. So when you have 2 years, you at least have 2 good years of coverage. So we changed it to 2 years as of 2025.
Okay, so the people who had a waiver for last year, they do not need one for this year?
They do. So everyone needs to re-sign a waiver
They have to
in
re-sign it.
2025, and it will be
Okay.
good until 2027.
Okay, so the one from last year is no good? And they
Correct.
need to re-sign one this year, and it's good for 2 years?
Correct.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Permission to speak from the chair. Thank you. Thank you for this presentation. This started with a motion that I put forward, so I really thank you. This was super educational. I was hoping it got aimed towards the residents more, but this was super helpful and informative, so thank you very much. I think I have seen an uptick in rodents, so that's kind of why I put the motion forward. Also, when you put down the bait, I think this would be for Louis, when you put down the bait in the question with like making it less potent or whatnot, do they adapt to that?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. We've been using the same bait for quite a while, and we haven't seen any slowing down as long as the feeding is happening. As long as we can control the food source and they're feeding on it, it works just as good as it did 2 years ago than it does today.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And that's all we got. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're going to take a 5-minute recess, please.
Next calendar item number is number 5. Deborah Nealand of 4 Kids Only was supposed to conduct a presentation relative to the grant 4 Kids Only has received. Unfortunately, she had a family emergency, won't be able to attend tonight. She requested that, if possible, the first meeting in March to move this up to.
Okay, that works.
Calendar item number 6, Brian Dakin, Senior Project Manager of Left Field, will provide the City Council with the design update for the new Revere High School.
Name and address for the record, please.
Brian Dakin, 1 High Street. And we will have the slides, right? Looks like that got solved. Perfect. Good evening, everybody. The high school project is heading to the conclusion of the design development phase. What we're going to do tonight is present a design update, a site design and building design update that's sort of a culmination of the last 7 or 8 months of design work between the team of consultants, staff, administrators, building committee, public response, first responders, et cetera. So a lot of work has gone into this. The design update you're going to see tonight. The package of drawings and specifications behind this went to the estimators in the last few weeks. We look to come back to the week, I forget the date, but the first week in March, we look to be back in front of the council with a more detailed update about permitting and cost updates. So we don't have cost updates for tonight. The estimators are in the process of working. What we wanted to do is run through the design update that the building committee has seen. Before I hand it over to the architects, I also wanted to mention that we're continuing going through the MEPA process. We have succeeded in getting through the first step, the environmental notification form. First of 3 steps in the MEPA process. We received certificates for that at the end of December, including a Phase 1 site demolition waiver. So provided that we get through the next month demonstrating that we're on budget, we are on schedule to bid site demolition work to remove the old foundations of the dog track and the clubhouse. And that bidding process will run in March and April, just for site demolition. And by May, we expect to be out there demolishing the track. We'll continue with the construction document phase and begin bidding out the building proper later in the summer and look to mobilize full construction on building-to-building, site utilities, foundations in the realm of August. So schedule is holding. We are submitting the second of 3 MIPA steps this month, the Draft Environmental Impact Report. We can talk about any of that in a little more detail, but again, I plan on doing a more detailed permitting update and cost update at the first March meeting. Right now, I wanted to turn it over to Dawn Goriello from Perkins Eastman, the architect, and she's going to walk you through some slides about the design of the building, then we can do some questions.
Thank you, Brian. Mr. President, Dawn Goriello, Perkins Eastman. Hi, everyone. Good to see you again. It's been a while, but we're back and figured we'd give you a design update. I think March 10th, Brian, is the placeholder we have for the cost update. So you'll hear from others on our team that night relative to cost. But in the meantime, design, this is what's being priced. If you would move the slide forward. I wanted to take a step back, remind everyone of the project goals, how we approach design, some of which is relative to the Revere context, the beach, the old Wonderland, and the amusement park, and first public beach in the U.S. So just context, you can move forward. I'm sure you're all very familiar with the city. Back to just basically laying out the building, we had a concept of the anatomy of a wave. Again, we went through a few different concepts relative to materials and building, but essentially the pure length of the building, it's longer than 2 football fields when you take the academic wings. So in order to break some of that up, both from an interior and exterior massing standpoint, we're looking at bringing some faceted curves into the design. If you go forward, I think it's a site plan, then the floor plan. I'll walk you through quickly what the different components of the building are. I won't go through all the floor plans. If you have specific questions about where things are, I will come back to those. This is the current site plan. It might not be zoomed out all the way. Yeah. Yep. You might be able to, up on the top, see where the hand is, like 3 or 4 over if you go and fit to width. Yeah. So now you can see the access, the campus entry. Yeah, thank you. Perfect. Right across from the Wonderland garage, the MBTA Wonderland garage. That's one campus entry exit. The other one is down across from the shopping plaza. Those are existing curb cuts, and we will maintain those. As you enter into the campus from the easternmost, again, north is just up and to the right, but the campus entry across from the Wonderland garage, you will be split by 2 fields. There's a multi-sport and a traditional turf soccer field. There's some surface parking, and that loop that takes you up kind of 90 degrees vertically to the north and then west takes you to the front entrance of the building. The tallest part of the building is the academic wing, which is that curved spine that I mentioned. That's 4 stories at the street edge. All of this is over under building parking. If you remember, we're in a floodplain. We have to raise the first floor elevation approximately 16 feet. So we will have under building parking that is accessed from the west. I have Emmett Gregory, by the way, with me from Mick Young Kim Design. He'll get into some of the details of the site plan. I just wanted to give you like a basic, here's what the campus will look like. So we have the front entry for car drop. If you come in the campus entry across from Wonderland and hang that first left, that's the bus drop on the south side. Both entrances take you into the heart of the school, which I will show some renderings of in a moment. But the entry point from both of those, car drop, public access, and bus drop, all take you into the heart of the school. So that longest wave on the south is the academic wing. We've got the heart of the school, and then a lot of the public spaces are off of that. So the gymnasium is that large rectangle on the upper left. We've got the auditorium on the second floor on the north, and then the other curve that welcomes you at the main entry is admin, nurse suite, MGH, community health, and then above that is performing arts adjacent to the auditorium. So if you're a staff member parking under the building, you take that entry point, you go around the back of the building. That's also where receiving is, by the way. dumpsters. We will have control over the dumpsters, do not worry. You enter the garage from the west. There's 2 entry points, and I think there's somewhere in the 350 spots under the building, a 300-ish surface, so it takes us plus minus 650 total parking spots. And then if you come around, you exit out near the tennis courts, there's 5 tennis courts. So the campus as a whole, 2 multi-sport fields, tennis, and Emmett Gregory, again, will get into some of the finer details of outdoor learning and opportunities on campus. So with that, I think it's next are the floor plans. So you can, perfect.
May I interrupt, Mr. President? Before this slide goes?
Yes, Councilor.
That last slide.
Yes.
The proposed commuter station, where would that sit?
That's a great question. We are engaged with them and are currently talking with them. Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, we're inviting them to meetings. From what I'm told, it may be the backside of Dunn Road access, like north of Dunn Road. You might know more than I do.
The short answer is we don't know. We have been coordinating with the MBTA team through the city planner and sharing this design with them. It would have to go somewhere up along the top middle of the page. In terms of how vehicles would get in and out and parking, I don't know. Yet what I'm told is the station would most likely be almost entirely over the tracks, but vehicular access is something that I do think that team's going to have a bit of a challenge to work out. What I'd add here is that Dunn Road connection is not a public vehicular connection. That's intended only for first responders, maintenance vehicles, and people that are walking around bikes. There will be gates at the end of Dunn Road and back where that connects into the campus loop so that people cannot drive cars up through that neighborhood.
Okay, not really the answer I was looking for, but thank you.
Mr. President? Mr. President? Oh, sorry. I just have a follow-up to that same topic, so I was
Okay.
wondering.
Go ahead, Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I was taking a look at the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs report that was issued on November 22nd. And speaking on that commuter rail, apparently the EPA, there's a mention here that in the EPA's report, identifying the Eastern County ditch as actually being tidally influenced, and that is in opposition to what the Revere Commission, Conservation Commission was saying, that it was freshwater non-tidal resource, and that because of this disagreement, them, and them believing that it is tidally influenced, that it says, quote, likely this would prevent any further consideration of interconnecting the commuter rail with the Blue Line. So is that something that, I'm not sure how to reconcile that. Thank you.
That is all of the, whether or not that ditch is tidally influenced has been a big topic of discussion with us. The project team deployed what are called level trolls out into the ditch to measure it over the course of months. The data shows that it's not tidally influenced. It rises and falls with stormwater only, not the tides. We will be responding to that memo as part of the DEIR submission to MEPA this month. And we believe the findings ultimately will be based on the data. It is not tidally influenced, will not require a Chapter 191 license, and therefore sort of alleviates some of that concern. But again, based on the data that we've measured out in that ditch does not rise and fall with the tide. Tidal action happens north of here, up towards the marsh.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Cogliandro.
Thank you, Mr. President. And before we go any further, so through you, Mr. President, to Mr. Deacon, you had brought up the MEPA process. And a couple of meetings ago, it was brought to our attention that you felt that the MEPA process was going to be finished around August. Is that still the case?
Yes.
Okay. With that said, the MSBA came up with a new rule that they're not going to be reimbursing us.
Correct.
Until the MEPA process is finished, which could mean that we have to take millions of dollars out on a loan at 4% or whatever it might be. My question is, do we have any idea why they made that rule? And has there been any conversation with the MSBA about getting rid of it? Because I don't like the fact that we were doing this project with the knowledge that we would be reimbursed as we go, and now the MIPA process is holding us up.
Sure. So we have a number of our clients are dealing with this issue. That's a new guideline MSBA implemented last year. They are not going to relent on it. I think where it came from is that MSBA reimbursement is subject to projects clearing state approval, and MIPA themselves, I think, exerted political pressure on MSBA to say, why are you continuously funding projects that aren't done with us? So it's created a scenario where any project in the MSBA pipeline that's going to need MIPA is going to stop, have reimbursement withheld at the end of the feasibility study. So a project's going to have to be approved, move forward, and entirely funded. Now, that has always been, even when we were back approving the project here, that's always been modeled in the cash flow that the city's worked with. So the cash flow that we have right now is all of the activities that we're doing to support what you're seeing on the screen are reimbursable. So in theory, there's a large reimbursement check that by the time we're done with MIPA, by my estimates, around $20 to $25 million is what the MSBA will owe the city. Once we show them that certificate, that'll come through. But we have tried on behalf of Revere and other clients to make the point to MSBA that this is really a hardship, and I don't think it's going anywhere.
It really is, it's concerning, and I'm glad we're going to get the reimbursement all at once that's owed to us once the MIPA process is done, but it's a lot of money. And just a quick question, what's a healing garden?
I think that's something that we'll cover with Emmett, if that's all right.
Sounds good.
Councilors, if we can all hold our questions to the end of the slides, please. Thank you.
I appreciate that you're reading it, though, so. Okay, so back to the floor plans. I'm gonna just breeze through those, but basically we have a 4-story academic wing, a 3-story heart of the school, and then a large gymnasium, 2-story volume, and then the auditorium is kind of the center in the middle. You can see it right there, and the performing arts is adjacent to that. So if there are specific questions, I'm happy to come back and answer where things are and how they relate to different program pieces if needed. So I think you have a couple more. This is the 3rd floor. You go one more. That's mostly the academic wing, the tallest part of the building. And then there's the under-building parking that I mentioned. So just put it in there for reference. So design, exterior, materials palette, multiple materials palettes back in 2022. We've been here a long time, working with this building committee a long time. So this, I went to the Wayback Machine for these. But this is just a reminder what the palette looks, feels like, and is relates back to the colors, textures, and Revere, and specifically the beach. So if you want to move forward, you'll see some actual selections, and then the photos of the physical samples taken at Don Shermella's old office in the basement down back in 2022. So the massing, you can see the next slide, the 4-story tallest part of the building on the street side. The front entry is on the right. You can see the auditorium, gym. There is the courtyard between the Western Academic Wing and the gymnasium. Emmett will describe in detail what some of what's happening in that very exciting space for the students. So let's move forward. We'll start to look at what it actually looks like. So the main entry I mentioned was kind of that secondary curve. That one of the academic wings is off the screen to the left. This is meant to be a large welcoming space that the students and any visitors arrive at every day. The lowest level, closest to the main entry, that's the main office. They have visual, visual connection to whoever's arriving at the school. They have a secure vestibule. People need to check in, get approved, and then they can enter the building. So from a security standpoint, this is probably the best connection that you could have to the main entry. Above it, we've got some art rooms and the Freshman Academy cafeteria, and then the performing arts sort of splays off to the right of the screen. Below that is the nurses suite and the Mass MGH Community Health Center. And that's related to the healing garden, so stay tuned for that with Emmett's piece. And you can see the materials on the right. We've got a field brick, is most of the whitish field brick. We've got a base of an iron spot, which is a darker brick that has like a sheen to it when the sun shines on it. We've got some phenolic wood panels and then some just neutral metals. And of course, window glass. If you go forward, we have a few exterior renderings and then some interior. This is the courtyard. So this is the other side of the heart of the school. So you enter through the main entry into the heart of the school. This is the courtyard piece. The gymnasium and health classrooms are off on the left, and that westernmost academic wing is off the screen to the right. Same materials palette. Next rendering. Bus entry, this is on the south. So the two academic wings splay off of this. Here you have some of the tech spaces, I think robotics and Coast Collaborative. Above that, we've got some art rooms, and then third and fourth floors are the media center. Those are really the areas that will get sort of views, we're hoping, through the buildings to the water, but definitely a focal point from the street. And again, the academic wings come off of that, and the bus entry is almost directly in the center of the screen. So buses will drop here, students enter into the heart of the school from the south. And next, I think we get into, all right, so from the inside, just some concept drivers, playful, serene, connections to the ocean. If you want to go to the next slide, these are just some driving points for the inside. Oh my gosh, it keeps taking you back. I'm making you work tonight, I'm sorry. It would have been 50 meg. So on the inside, relating back to the ocean, we've got the heart of the school colors that relate to both some neutral ocean colors, but also the school pride and school colors. Then as we go through the classroom and corridors, we connect it back to the marsh. I have a slide on that real quick. And they're sort of colored so that when you're on any given staircase or any given floor, you kind of know where you are in the building. And you can see the classrooms and media. So next slide walks you through the ecosystem and the marsh. So first floor, subtitle, mudflat, it's in the blue range. We've got low marsh on the second floor, the yellow range, and then high marsh and uplands are two different tones of green. So connecting it back again to the natural environment here in Revere. So if you want to go to the next. These are the actual materials. So on the left, we've got all of the general. So millwork is a wood tone. We've got neutral lockers, a lot of neutrals in the fields, the wall paint and wall tile. We've got linoleum floors throughout. We've got accent floors that relate to that color scheme I just mentioned, as well as paint and accent tiles. To give you a view of that, at the midpoint of each of the two academic wings times 4 floors, so there's 8 of these. They're these breakout spaces, flexible learning spaces where students can come out, they can collaborate, they can work together, do group projects or individual work, and they're all colored by floor. So I think this is the 3rd floor that we're showing rendered here. You can see the visual connection to the stair. That's at the midpoint of that academic wing. That's intentional. That's sometimes some places where things are not always good that are happening. So having connections to that is important. And then just beyond where the people are sitting, there's a teacher planning room with glass out to the corridor. So again, like some passive supervision with adults in the general vicinity. And then the classrooms feed off of this. Next, we have a typical classroom. You can see the exterior wall on the right. We've got 4 teaching walls, 4 areas of whiteboards throughout each space, lots of natural light, controlled light, either from the south or the north. And you can see the classroom entry, which connects directly to that flexible learning rendering that you just saw. Next slide. The heart of the school, I mentioned that all the entry points kind of take you into this space. This is a 3-story space. It connects some major elements of the building from a community standpoint and a public use, but also student use. The gym is just below behind the RHS. The courtyard is off on the right, so those exterior windows, left. The exterior windows connect to that learning courtyard, and the main entry is on the right. That central staircase takes you up to the level that the auditorium is at, to both the freshman cafeteria. This is 10 through 12 cafeteria here at the heart of the school. And it connects up to their freshman caf, which is specifically for those students related to the freshman academy. I think you heard about how the building's laid out previously, and the performing arts wing. I think this is just another view towards the courtyard. There's some built-in seating. There's variety of seating, both high tops and built-in banquettes and little nooks and crannies. So if, a student is, has a sensory overload being in a space with a lot of people, there are these smaller areas that they can sit and have either a more quiet lunch or just a handful of students together. Then we've got the media center. I mentioned it was 2 stories. It kind of splays out into the heart of the school. This is the main entry from the 3rd floor, and then it connects with a staircase up to the 4th floor, which again has those views out towards the beach. And if you want to scroll to the next, got some built-in seating. This is where it's open to above. On the left is the exterior windows that have views out towards the ocean, and there's open railing, high open railing that students can see through, but not be, not have a safety issue. And there's stacks and tables on the 2nd floor of the media center, which is the 4th floor of the building. We've got the gymnasium. We've got 3 cross courts. We've got 1 main competition court. We were just working through the bleachers today. We can seat about half the student population between the 2 bleacher sets on both sides of the gymnasium. It also has a walking track, which you can see. The next rendering shows the view from the 2nd floor. There's students who may not want to participate in what's happening, whether it's volleyball, basketball, badminton. They can just walk, and that's kind of an extra PE space that we were able to capture because 3 sides of the 2nd floor of the gym have learning spaces off of it. So we took that corridor and turned it into a physical fitness walking track. It's not a competition track. It's not a running track. It's we did something similar at our Essex Tech school, if anyone's been up there. You've been up there? Yeah. So same idea. And it's kind of captured space for the benefit of students and staff and even the community if they want to come walk on a not so nice weather day. And you can see the materials on the right. We've got wall pads. We've got that 2nd floor, just like Essex, has a netting that prevents things from going over, but also from coming up. It kind of just disappears, and you can see it in the next rendering if you'd like to go there. All those windows are the other side of the walking track, and they're facing north, so there's no direct sun on students as they're, participating in basketball games or any sort of competition. So this is a view of the walking track. You can see down to the volume of the gymnasium. This is the auditorium. So it's on the 2nd floor off of the heart of the school, about 1,000 seats here. And we actually went and toured. We took some of the arts department down to our Boston Arts Academy project and right across from Fenway Park. They got to see their auditorium, give feedback, ask questions, and we were able to come back with basically we have an orchestra and then a balcony level, and that allows for different size performances. You could black out the balcony level and just have a more intimate performance, or you could open the whole thing and seat about 1,000 audience members. That 2nd floor of this is the 3rd floor of the building, also connects to the heart of the school. And there's an ability to close off the gym to have separate access from the courtyard or the under building parking. This would come off of the heart of the school for access, and it's accessible from that large stair you saw at the heart of the school. So I think there's one other view of this from the side. And then I think we just have a handful of other ancillary spaces. The stairs, you can see the color scheme. Guardrails. The levels will connect to the coding of the floors, the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, and the color scheme, so that when you hit the landing of any stair going 4 stories, you know which floor you're on. This is the maker space. This is intended to be more of an industrial space, a creative space. Students can build things from scenes for the auditorium to, laser cutting projects. So this is kind of an all-purpose space. And then here's one of the art classrooms. I think there's 4 of these, plus some audio and video tech spaces related to arts as well. So with that, that's the building. I'll let Emmett do the site, and then we'll take your questions collectively, if that's okay.
All right. Thanks, Don. And actually, we'll keep that presentation up if you don't mind.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
If you just give your name and address for the record, please.
Sure, of course. Emmett Gregory, 100 Mass Ave, Boston. Again, I'm Emmett Gregory with McYoung Kim Design. We're the landscape architect on the project. So today we'll talk briefly about the landscape design and kind of where we stand today. So one of the first things we do when we talk about landscape is programming, which means what are the uses of the landscape? How can it complement some of the things that Dawn is doing on the interior of the building? And how can we make it more than just aesthetically pleasing, but kind of put it to use to help serve the classrooms and the students? So we've started with some ideas as to what programming opportunities we feel like might make sense for the project, and then I'll show you kind of where they've landed on the project site. So the first idea is an outdoor performance space or classroom. Dawn and her team are designing a really beautiful auditorium interior, and we'd like to do something to complement that exterior. So when you don't want to have a big formal event or gathering interior, we've come up with the idea of some outdoor performance spaces that might be 100 or 200 students. It could hold an orchestra event or a play or a graduation ceremony or something like that. We think there might be some outdoor classrooms where on a nice day, a teacher could come out and bring their students into the landscape and hold class outside. But these are not spaces that are going to be really formally designed with chairs and seats that are permanent, but they're just spaces that on a normal day can be used kind of like the photos you see there on the left, but then when needed, you can open it up for a larger gathering. Kind of on the opposite side of that would be study nooks. Those are areas that are designed for 1, 3, 5 students to gather in kind of smaller groupings and study, maybe get away from kind of the hustle and bustle. In designing the landscape, we try to design both spaces that are a little bit more active and for larger groups, as well as spaces that are smaller for students who might want to take a step back and kind of get away from the action for a little bit. Next slide. Again, continuing on this programming opportunities theme, we think that there might be some boardwalks and walking loops. That's a great opportunity for exercise. The boardwalks help students kind of engage with the landscape. They could get out over some of these landscapes we're creating and could be a cool educational opportunity. Learning gardens, they have some really cool programs we understand in the school around hospitality, and we think this might be a nice tie-in there so students can get their hands dirty and understand what it means to grow a vegetable and harvest it and then bring it inside as a part of their program. Next slide, please. Fitness zones, we think this might tie in nicely with some of the PE activities. I'll caveat that these photos aren't necessarily exactly what we're going to end up with, but just to give you guys an idea of kind of the direction we're heading. So fitness zones, areas where students could kick a ball around, be a little bit more active, let loose a little bit. Flexible lawn, pretty self-explanatory, but just open lawn that can be used for a variety of different gatherings, events, field days, throw a blanket out there when it's nice out to study, or just hang out in between classes. Next slide. A microforest, this is an interesting one. We've seen them pop up around Cambridge, but the idea is that you plant a bunch of different species, very tightly spaced and very small, and then let them grow. So it pretty much mimics a kind of a new growth forest, and what you get is in real time, really quickly, you get to kind of see the succession and the natural development of a forest. I think that could be a really cool learning opportunity to where, at your freshman year, you might come out and those trees are at your knee, and by the time you're graduating, they're above your head. So this could be a really cool opportunity that we could bring the students out, and I could see them planting and helping with the maintenance and learning there. Restorative spaces, this is kind of when we get into the healing garden topic. High school can be really overwhelming, and landscapes have been found to kind of have healing properties, and we think that these restorative spaces might be a good opportunity to where if a student's having a really tough day, is feeling overwhelmed, they can come outside and kind of catch a break and reset a little bit. So we'll be designing some more quiet, intimate spaces for stuff like that. All right, next slide. Finally, the site plan. So this is where we stand today in terms of the design. I'll kind of walk you from right to left. But starting on the top right there, the compensatory storage area, that's where we might see some of those walking loops and boardwalks. This also serves some important stormwater function, but we also think could be an interesting learning opportunity and recreate some of the natural ecosystems of the area. As Don mentioned, we have both a kind of a standard field as well as a multi-sport field. The healing gardens are there in that kind of triangular shape there. So that's right off some of the health services areas, and we feel like that could be a nice tie-in. It's a little quieter in that area of campus. And again, if you're having a rough day or just need to kind of get away, that's a spot where you might do that. Moving down to the bottom right of that educational wing is where the circular microforest there we think will end up. Swinging around on the left side of the building there, that's the learning garden. It has a nice southern exposure. That's where we might see those raised plant beds that kind of work with some of the interior hospitality programs going on at the school. And then in that kind of U-shaped space there would be the courtyard. So that's above the parking garage and is connected to the cafeteria interior. So this is going to be a nice kind of extension of the cafeteria, and we envision this being a really lively, active space. Some of the fitness zone spaces we think will end up there, as well as you can kind of see in the lighter green there, an open lawn. And then finishing off on the left is the 5 tennis courts that Don mentioned. And I think that does it for us. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
All right, great job. So we'll go counselors. Councilor McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is for Brian. I know it's been a while since the last time we've met, but inflation is still really high. The interest rates is really high. You've kind of maneuvered this building a little bit differently than what was proposed when the last time we met. I'm just wondering if you know, and you probably, it might be a premature question, but has the building costs gone up since the last time we've talked?
We are in the estimating process of this package, a couple thousand drawings right now, and it's a really complex question. We think we developed the prior estimates to cover the development, the type of development that you see from schematic design to design development, but we are also creating what's called a value management log, which is a number of ideas that if we need to refine scope, to make things a little more basic than they might otherwise be, to hit the budget that was approved, we're going to have that ready in parallel. But it is it's always a difficult time to put a price on a building of this magnitude, but there's a few things going on. Obviously, things like tariffs are a concern of the team. However, on the flip side of that, it's a very competitive bid market right now, and a lot of contractors are putting good numbers in because they want an anchor project like this to hold them above water for the next 3-4 years. So we're seeing competitive bid results out there on other projects that make us believe that we think this estimate's going to be in the range of where we need it to be. But I'll be able to tell you with much more certainty next time we meet, because we have 2 entities doing estimates right now, going through every drawing, and we'll be spending the better part of the next 3 or 4 weeks honing those estimates in.
So I just want to say that, to me, this looks like a Cadillac, if we're talking about cars. And, you know, I mean, I don't know what the city can afford. I mean, we're all concerned about paying for this, and I'm sure the residents are too. So you did say that we could, if it goes beyond what we talked about, we could scale it down to a Camry LX.
Yeah, we will not exceed the budget that has been approved. We will find ways, if we need to, if we can't implement a lot of the detail that you just saw, we will make adjustments to hit the budget. The project's never going to come back to the council and ask for more money.
And this is a funny thing, but I was looking at, I forgot her name, but she was talking about the stairs. I'm surprised you didn't put the musical, so when the kids walk down, they can create music. Because, I mean, you got everything else in there, you might as well just put the musical stairs in there. So it's supposed to be funny, but,
I get it.
you know.
I get you. No.
All right, thank you very much, Brian.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Jaramillo.
Mr. President, thank you through to Mr. Dakin. So really appreciate you coming up. I just have some concerns. We've talked a little bit about, or a year ago, if you can believe it. We talked about some of the energy and water efficiency features that we might want to include in this building, and I didn't hear anything about that now. My concern is that I didn't hear anything about it. Maybe it's been put into your plan, but I think it'd be a big missed opportunity if we sent this to an estimator without those considerations, and I'd love to hear, hopefully you can relieve my agita here on that respect.
Yeah, there's absolutely, we did not, to be fair, touch upon it in this presentation, but the building is still being designed to be a LEED Silver building. It's going to be what's called a passive house building. That's a very interesting program that's very environmentally conscious, sustainability leaning, and is more or less going to beat or exceed all of the aggressive energy codes that have been rolling into being in effect over the number of years. So I think we've got a really aggressive program for the sustainability of the school. It might be, especially with the amount of detail that you're used to on this, maybe what we can do is bring some of those people to the next meeting and focus on that a little bit more. But the package that has gone to the estimators is a LEED Silver building, passive house, and is going to maximize the incentives that we can get back from various state agencies.
And I
Did
was
I
just
do it
going
right
to
there?
mimic what you were saying, which is maybe we focus on a sustainability. That's not what this was. This was an update to the building committee. This is a replication of our last meeting, which was 2 weeks ago. Not intended to be sustainable in its description, but more about what the building looks like. So we can put something together and come on the 10th and have a quick description of it's in the drawings, but there's not a presentation per se tonight, so we can bring that if you're interested.
Yeah, Mr. President, actually, and the clerk will help me out here if possible, just to spare our council meetings. We do have a climate and sustainability subcommittee, so I don't know if you'd be willing to present at that, and I don't know if I could entertain a motion to have a sustainability-focused conversation in that subcommittee over the next few months. Yeah, so how would that work, Ashley, I guess? Okay. Okay, but that's something we can do from here? Okay, great, so I'll let you know, I'll
And we're
circle
happy
back
to
with
do
a
it
date.
that way. Yep,
Thank you.
great.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Dakin, so my questions are basically surrounding that certificate that was issued on November 22nd. And I don't know if I should have a level of concern. I do, from reading this, I am concerned, but maybe my concerns are unwarranted, and that's what I want to give you an opportunity to address tonight. So, and they're even more, now I'm even more concerned to think that, God forbid, if something were to happen with the MEPA process, we would not get the MSBA reimbursement. Am I understanding that correctly? Is that even a possibility? Because some of the things in here are pretty concerning, so.
Ultimately, the MEPA process is never going to result in the project dying.
Okay.
The MEPA process, the risk in the MEPA process is us achieving it, getting through it in the amount of time we're always up here telling you.
Perfect.
So we're trying to, the way to do that is to analyze the documents like the one you've been analyzing and to craft our next step in the MEPA process with direct responses to a lot of those concerns that regulators had. What I will say about the specific concerns about being in the 100-year floodplain, that's something that a large percentage of this city is blessed, so to speak, with being in that floodplain, including the existing site. So a lot of the concerns outlined in that letter revolve around be careful when you choose to build in a 100-year floodplain. And honestly, communities like Revere just don't really have the option of not building in the 100-year floodplain. So we think that we are crafting the correct response to the state regulators that we'll be submitting in this next MIPA submission, the DEIR. And we're confident that ultimately, through the process, their comments will be heard and we'll be able to demonstrate that, that we're being responsible with the city's resources and we're designing a resilient site that's going to be able to hold up to these 50, 100-year storm events.
So I just want to run through just a few of the concerns, and then my next question is going to be, well, let me run through the concerns first. So one of them has to do with the Chelsea Creek could become overwhelmed by overflow. And there would, as a result of that, there would be a need to create, to offset the project's water flow. So that's one concern. I don't know how we would create that, to create that offset, but that's in there. There are also 2 hazardous materials that are still remaining open. MassDOT has stated that we'd need to do traffic monitoring plans for 5 years due to approximately 4,754 new daily traffic trips that will be resulting. Any electric vehicle charging infrastructures will need to be designed to prevent saltwater exposure, which could be compromised during any flooding events. Synthetic fields should be reconsidered because they'll exacerbate flooding. And I think this was a big concern, that because of the podium-style design with the parking underneath the building, which was discussed earlier, the school will be closed, have to be closed during any flood events. And then lastly, in Dr. Rayo's letter from the Massachusetts Water Resource Commission, he did strongly urge that in order to protect our assets, we choose a different site. We relocate it because of the 100-year flood plan. So would any of these things be taken care of and addressed and achieved from our contingency fund that we have, or would this equal extra dollars that we would have to,
Would not been built into the design. So we knew what we were getting into in terms of a lot of these issues in building down there and building in the 100-year floodplain, which more or less extends to and past School Street, if you look at some of the 100-year floodplain maps. But it's essential that municipalities and private developers build in coastal areas. And there's just really, the simplest way to put it is there's really nowhere else to go. Trying to hit some of those concerns, the podium-style building with the garage underneath. We've modeled 100-year storms, 50-year storms, that there will be standing water in that garage. When that's the case, you're going to have thousands of homes underwater. The school's designed to obviously not be open because it's not going to be accessible in those storms. Roads will be flooded. There will be evacuations. So the idea is to protect the asset by bringing all the mechanical equipment up above those 100-year storm levels. The building in some of those scenarios could be an island. But really, it's a little bit less of a concern that the school's not going to be able to open because the National Guard would probably be deployed in these scenarios. So there's just not a lot of getting away from a lot of that. We're designing the site drainage to be able to get water off of the site through the drainage infrastructure, not into the neighborhoods. That's one of the real north stars of a project like this, is you're never going to shed water into neighboring houses. But I don't believe that anything in there really drives added cost. The engineers we have on the job have sort of known this going in, and we believe we're designing it in a way that we can meet the budget, and ultimately MIPA will agree that, we've been as responsible as we can with the design of the building to give the city a facility that they can use for 50, 100 years.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilor Genzio.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Dakin. So I just want to get back to this commuter rail station, and Tom Skorowski's in the room. Maybe he can shed some light on it. When we were deciding between the 2 locations, one of the reasons I went for the Wonderland site, I was assured that if a commuter rail station did come, that there would be accommodations to access it and what have you. But that doesn't seem like the case now. Is the commuter rail station, is that dead and I just don't know about it? Or?
So in Tom, you can hit me in the back of the head if you need to here, but it's right now what we're dealing with is that the high school project is full steam ahead in terms of design and permitting, and the commuter rail station feasibility study is just starting. To my knowledge, I don't believe they've yet procured a design team, or they're in the process of and close to it. We have met with the MBTA a number of times. We're sharing the plans, and we'd love to get access to that team so I could sort of start getting more literal answers to your questions, Counselor. But I really think we need that process to, in a way, catch up to where the high school's at. No, sorry.
So we're moving at the speed of the MBTA on the commuter rail design project, and it's pertinent. So they've procured somebody to work with on this initial phase. We've connected with them, and we've set aside, there is some land in the back that we're intending for that purpose. I think where the real challenge will be is getting in and out and coordinating all the other requirements of having a commuter rail. You can't just build the station and expect people to get there, right? There's got to be wide enough berths to get through, parking, et cetera. But we're moving as quickly as we can at the pace that the state's at.
Okay, all right. It just doesn't seem to be a spot for it. I don't know how you would, after this is designed and started, how you would then cut roads in and parking lots.
Yeah, we think there's going to have to, the main entry road is something that's going to need to be shared. That's sort of why we've been reaching out saying, listen, it's going to be a lot easier for us to resize a road, sidewalks, move it 10 feet here, here and there, if we can figure it out this year. Because by the time we're into next summer, spring, all the stuff's going to be getting built.
Right.
So I completely understand.
Anyone else?
The point, and we're trying to get whatever we can out of that process to make sure that the red light's on. Am I just not being loud enough? Okay. Okay, that sounds good. Usually no one accuses me of having a quiet voice. But so we're doing, I completely understand the concern. We really just, we've got to get the two projects working in a little better synergy. They're just a little bit behind us in planning out details.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Green Esquire.
Thank you, Mr. President. How are we going to prevent Dunn Road from being flooded?
We're not changing any of the elevations to Dunn Road. The way that sits on the land right now won't be changed. We are adding better flooding infrastructure to the grass areas on either side of the ditch. So that diagonal line that goes through is that Eastern County ditch.
Yeah.
Water will be able to get to that ditch better than it does right now. And certainly one of the main benefits of removing all the paving that's down there, that's a lot of what causes stormwater flow that sheets across those old parking lots, has nowhere to infiltrate in. So I might get this number wrong, but I think we're increasing the amount of non-paved areas on site by about 6 or 7 acres. And what that's going to do is just allow much more stormwater to just go straight down and not run out into the neighborhood.
Dunn Road is prone to flooding now.
Mm-hmm.
So once the school is being built, you're going to build it higher, right? You're going to elevate the land. It's going to flood even more.
So the area between, when we were talking earlier, that when we had the site plan, for every area of that site that we raise, we have to lower a corresponding area. It's a pretty complex ratio. So the stormwater basin between the Eastern County Ditch and Dunn Road is going to be lower than it is right now to attract and hold the water and let it out slowly. So yes, we are building up the site where the school is, but we're lowering the site in other areas that are designed to catch water and slowly let them back out into the marsh.
So
if
it
that
may in
makes
fact
sense.
help it.
And the city's done work at the pump station
Right.
recently down there, so we hope all of these things in concert will better the condition of Dunn Road going underwater less.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other counselors? Permission to speak from the chair? Thank you. Brian, thank you, and thank you to your team for coming up tonight. That was, I got to be honest, do I have concerns? Absolutely. But I'm really excited about this, watching this, seeing the opportunities that students from Revere are going to have to be able to go and have educational opportunities sitting on their, like, as she said, Essex Tech, they go out and they have the science class in these areas that they have around their schools. And those opportunities, like, I would be excited to go to that high school. And I commend you for that. But I do have a couple questions. So I know you said this repeatedly, but as far as the cost, we already set a budget that we approved.
Correct.
You will not be coming to us for any more money, correct? Okay.
I'll sleep a lot better when we're done estimating, but correct, we're not going to exceed this budget.
Okay, thank you. For both the Dunn Road area and I guess the other what-if site of the old high school, if we were to get 100 or a 50-year flood, do you think that just across the highway would be safe from that concerns that we have? If one of these floods hit us, would just the area from where Wonderland is to across the highway where the other school was going to be built, do you think the impact of the flood would be the same?
The 100-year storm right now it's a spooky map to look at, especially as a resident, but 100-year storm, you're talking standing water all the way to Broadway.
Right.
So the existing site would be under. It'd be under by a bit less than Wonderland, but it's the same floodplain. The 50-year storm even breaks the MBTA train line. That sort of functions as a little bit of a stop for a lot of these flooding events, but the 50-year and 100-year storms are already over that. And once they get over that, they make it all the way over 1A to the existing site and ultimately up to around the fire station in Broadway.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dagan. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Rule 34, public comment pursuant to Chapter 402 of the Acts of 1965.
Okay, any resident that would like to come up, you have 2 minutes. Please state your name, address, and what motion you'd like to speak on. Please.
It's the school, of course.
Okay. Name and address, sir.
My name is Anthony Cantino. If people are not familiar with it, and I live at 240 Suffolk Avenue, Revere, Mass. I'd like to ask the gentleman where the teachers are complaining about the students having hot boxes. Are they going to allow a lounge there so that the students can puff away at the lounge? Are you going to put a lounge in the area for the students so they won't have to puff in the hot boxes? That's one question.
Please address to the chair, please.
Is he going to provide a lounge there for the students where they're puffing away?
There will be no smoking lounge in the school. No, Mr. Cantino.
Oh, no, okay. Well, I'd like to save the city a lot of money. If they're going to decide to put the school on top of Venice, okay, and have the children with gondolas go to school, why don't they use the top of the ocean, not build it right on top of the ocean, and they won't have to do any excavation and save millions of dollars for the city. Thank you.
Great idea. Thank you,
Anthony
Mr. Cantino.
Cantino.
Have a good night. Name and address for the record,
Mr.
please.
President, I did not puff before I came here today. Ed Terrell, 70 Sewell Street, Revere, Mass. A couple of questions and a recommendation. The first question...
regarding...
Oh, I'm sorry, about the school we just spoke about?
Thank you.
Thank you. The first question is, it's been alluded to and talked about a little bit, is that the underground garage for the new high school is designed to flood. I'd like a little more elaboration about that. Will people be parked under there while this happens? And it's been talked about a little bit, but I'd like to know a little bit more. The second question, it's more of a concern. We're building a $500 million new high school, and will this have any positive impact on the quality of our kids' education? As I've spoken about before, unfortunately, U.S. News and World Report has shown that at Revere High School, 82% of our kids graduate, but 50% of them are not proficient in reading, which means they can't even read the agenda at tonight's meeting. So hopefully that will be addressed. The other question I had was about a potential commuter rail station at the Wonderland site. Now, will that affect the neighborhoods nearby within a half mile, because that's part of the new commuter housing law? Will there be urban density increases across those neighborhoods? I'm not entirely sure. And finally, as a recommendation, is there a possibility of putting a time capsule underneath the cornerstone of the high school so that 50 years from now, when this process is repeated, they can learn from our mistakes and they can learn from what we've done right and maybe do a little bit better of a job, even though that we're not doing a terrible job, you know? Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Terrell.
Can he respond to the question?
He doesn't need to right now. Name and address for the record.
Christine Robertson, 187 Charter Street. I just have one question. I'm very impressed, and I know what it is to work in a floodplain. As I have stated before, I've been on the Conservation Commission for many years. My one question is once this school is built, because of the timetable and all the obstacles that they're going through at this point, will this school be state-of-the-art by the time it's built to accommodate our students?
Good question. Mr. Dakin, please.
I think the short answer is yes. And right now, as you can tell, we're designing the building. We're going to be bidding the building out over the next year or two. Building mechanical systems will be cutting-edge, sustainable systems. That being said, there are systems that we want to be familiar with. You don't always want to jump on every new wave of mechanical building systems till they're out there and they're vetted. But I will say that in terms of the technology that's in the school, that's not something that we will bid for a few years. That's something that happens later. Technology functions at a much quicker pace than building technology getting updated. So in terms of computers, projectors, devices, all that stuff, we'll be buying all of that in late 2027 so that we make sure we're not buying old technology.
As far as the garage flooding.
Yeah.
You mentioned that in your speech. I'm not sure it was meant as literal, but it was meant the garage is made to flood, but it's not expected to do so, correct?
Any sea rise event or standing water storm event above a certain depth, the water, that's when I say it's designed to flood. We're not putting any mechanical or electrical equipment down there. In the event that these storms are coming, the hope is that it really shouldn't flood based on, a little half an hour it rains an inch or two. That's not the scenarios we're talking about. We're talking about a coastal inundation storm where the city should know it's coming and there shouldn't be people parked down there. But it is designed to, if we have high stormwater events, tidal influence events, there can be standing water on the lower parts of the site into the garage. The whole idea of that is to keep the first floor slab of the building above the worst case scenario. So really, we'd have the building up where it is regardless. We just found that there was an efficiency in putting parking under there instead of having a foundation 15 feet below the first floor and then just a bunch of void space, so to speak, under there.
Thank you, Mr. Dakin. Ma'am, name and address, and motion you will speak on.
I'm speaking on the housing issue that's here next. My name is Bonnie Curran. I live at Barrett Street in Revere. I just had a couple of questions, that this is going to, and I have a lot of questions actually, but I know I only have a few minutes. They're removing a lot of zoning. We passed a plan in 2020 for 10 years. We allowed 5-story buildings to be built, and they're being built. And this plan now wants to go to 7, over 5. And they also want to impose a fee on the residents for 3%. But that fee can go from 1% to 5% to the residents, because that's how the law states that they can do that. So I have some issues about you guys passing this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Who's driving up rents, by the way?
Michael Tucker, 9 Ellerton Street. Reserve my rights to speak on 7 and 8 after the presentation.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Thank you. I'll close that side.
Next up is the zoning subcommittee report.
Council Zambudo.
Thank you, Mr. President. The zoning subcommittee met this evening, as we all know, on two issues. The first is 24-338, communication from the Chief of Planning and Community Development requesting an adoption of the city's housing production plan. The committee voted out favorably, so I'd ask for a roll call.
Okay, a roll call on the HHP Community Development. Madam Clerk.
Shall the city council adopt the City of Revere Housing Production Plan as amended? Counselor Agenzio.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Cogliandro.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Janino.
No.
No, Counselor Guarino Sawaya.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Haas.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Jaramillo.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Kelly.
No.
No, Counselor McKenna.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Novoselsky.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Zambudo.
No.
No, and Council President Silvestri.
Yes.
Yes, the housing production plan as amended has been adopted.
Next up, and I might add that for the first time in 25 years, I'll be giving a minority report after these votes on the zoning subcommittee and my reasons for it. I'm on the record as being against it, and my reasons, my committee chose to go against what my recommendations were, and that's, you know, well and good, but it's been 25 years since something like this has ever happened, so I just wanted to point that out. So the second was the request of the Chief Planning and Community Development relative to the adoption of the Housing Development Incentive Zone and proposed activities at Suffolk Downs, the adoption of Housing and Development Incentive Zone and proposed activities at Green Street, Shirley Avenue, and the authorization of Mayor Patrick Keefe to execute and implement housing development tax exemption agreements for housing development incentive projects in each respective zone. So we'll call for a roll call. The committee
Mr.
voted.
President?
Could I speak on this, Mr. President?
I would like to as well. Councilor Kelly first.
Okay,
Thank
Councilor
you.
Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I just have a question on this for my own edification purposes. This would, if it goes through, if we vote this through, it would allow for negotiations to begin wherein the developer at the Suffolk Downs site would be eligible for tax incentives. However, there still would not be any renegotiation of the special permit wherein no affordable housing would be required. So I just want to establish that that is in fact correct. And also just voice my concerns that I do feel as though, along with Councilor Zambudo, that because this special permit was previously issued, I don't think it's something that we should be getting involved in at this point. And especially since there doesn't seem to be any kind of an incentive where we're not getting any affordable housing, this is just, you know, and I also want to, I have a question that if this were to go through, does this affect or negatively impact the amount of revenue that we were expected to get in from the HYM development at Suffolk Downs? So those are my two questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
So on the first question as to whether this would implicate a reopening of the special permit, as was mentioned at the zoning subcommittee meeting, I think there are differences of opinion as to whether or not those two are linked, and we'll seek to get those assurances within my contacts at the state. And I know Councilor Zambudo is going to look into his own counsel to make sure we're doing things the proper way in that regard. But from our standpoint, they are separate issues. And For what it's worth, I know we just talked about the housing production plan and the importance of housing affordability. This project was approved at a different time. And whereas Mr. O'Brien had mentioned, there were different expectations and different desires of the council. And I think it's critical, particularly of a project of this scale, to respect agreements that were made when they were made. And I would also say, I think some of the more aggressive things we could do about affordable housing production, we will be able to do precisely because of the transformative impact of this project and the development in the city, in my professional opinion. And the second question, could you ask it once again?
Sure. So I'm just wondering that if this proposal or negotiation does go through, these tax incentives are given. I just want to know if that's going to impact the amount of revenue that was projected that that's going to be generated from this project to the city. Is it at all going to decrease the amount of revenue that we're expected to take in? Thank you.
So I will say, if you were to authorize the mayor to negotiate an agreement, after the state approves this and we begin negotiations, we would bring the entire cabinet into this conversation, and understanding that there's been a lot of work to make sure we can afford this high school, as we just talked about. We're going to make sure that we have all the right people at the table to make sure this doesn't negatively impact our fiscal outlook. The one thing I will say is something that would negatively impact our fiscal outlook is if we can't jumpstart this project at this critical stage. And, there's a few catalyst projects within Suffolk Downs. Portico is one of them. It is the high-rise construction. It is a signature building that we believe, and as do our colleagues at HYM, that this will stimulate further development throughout the project and have that catalytic
Just as a follow-up to that, so if this wasn't going to happen, then are we to believe that there could be some type of an issue with starting that Portico project, or?
We believe that, again, devil's in the details, and we'll bring you a deal to discuss later in the year, but we believe that this will have a catalytic impact to move construction ahead earlier than otherwise it would be able to, absent such an agreement.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Quagliandro.
Thank you, Mr. President. Guys, first and foremost, this should be going back to subcommittee so that we can look into this further for legal purposes. I agree with that 100%. And if I have to vote on this tonight, it's going to be a no. My question is, why zoning? Why can't we take one project or a singular project and give a tax break on that project? Why do we have to create zoning? Because we have two bonds. One's $500 million, the other one's $29.5 billion. Oh, excuse me, oh, goodness, $29.5 million. Whew. This is like a storm off in the distance that we're looking at, right? Okay, and we don't know if it's going to turn into an EF6 tornado or if it's going to dissipate by the time it gets to us. And I feel like a lot of the decisions we make up here are based on our ability to pay for this high school. And we just had a presentation about healing gardens and all these things and 7,000 trees. Sorry, Councilor McKenna, I know you love the trees, but I just don't understand why we can't pick and choose who we give relief to. And I don't want another overlay district that people are going to build and we're going to give them a discount to build in all these areas. So can we get rid of the incentive zone? I can't get on board with that. We're going to lose out on revenue. And also, I understand that we're going to get reimbursement from the state, but if you boil it down, the state reimbursement is taxpayer dollars. Okay, so we're essentially taking the money from the developer, giving them a break, and then hitting us. So if you could, I know I just said a lot of stuff, if you could touch on some of that, thank you.
Sure. So on the first comment about zoning, this is just called a zone because the state asks you to bring, if you're one of the 6 or 26 gateway cities in the Commonwealth, you can use this tool, but if and only if you create zones in which it's appropriate. So we could either have it used across the city, or we could pick certain areas within a zone. it's not zoning per se, it's not a new overlay district or anything like that. It's just an additional tool we have in our toolbox with each of these zones. It's been a late night, so I got to think through your other questions here. As to, I guess, the financial and fiscal impact, I would recommend when a new tax deal comes forward, probably zoning wouldn't be the appropriate subcommittee. It would probably be Ways and Means, as it does.
And this is one of the reasons that you go to subcommittee, is so we can analyze these things, right?
And I think if and when we were to get a tax deal, I think that would be the time, in my opinion, to look over the mechanics of the deal, because we don't have those in front of us yet. But I take your point. And then as to the legality, I think that is something, when this plan is approved, we could submit to the state. And that's something I'll be including with the request, that they analyze the legality of this. But again, in my opinion and experience in doing this before and looking at how it's been done in other communities, it's often the project getting approved first and then the tax deal following it.
There's a little bit of discomfort for me putting my name on something when I don't know if it's legal. 100% legal. And it's not that I don't believe you or siding with Councilor Zambudo. I just think it's better off for the council to get all of this information before we jump into this. This is taking money out of our pockets, and out of the city's pocket and out of the people's pockets. So.
And then to the last question about the state tax credit, the one thing I will say is there's a lot of money in the HDIP state program right now, and if we don't take advantage of it for critical projects like Suffolk Downs that are important to the future of Revere, other gateway cities, Worcester's going to take advantage of it, Fitchburg's going to take advantage of it, Malden, among others. So this is a resource we haven't been able to tap into. The funds are already approved, so it's a matter of whether we're going to keep them in Revere or send them elsewhere.
Thank you, Tom. Councilor Guarino-Swire. Councilor Guarino-Swire.
I just have a quick question, Tom. This is an all-union project, right? And you're keeping it as an all-union project? Okay, just want to make sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Jaramillo.
Thank you, Mr. President, through you to Tom. In subcommittee, we discussed about the process of this HDIP zone, and we've talked about how this will need to get approved by the council, the mayor will negotiate, then it will come back to the council. I'm just not entirely sure that the language from this motion that was filed actually does that. And I'll point where it says, after Mayor Patrick Keefe Jr. to execute and implement housing development tax exception agreements for housing development incentive projects in each respective zone. So I'm actually going to do a substitute motion to the roll call to do two things. Strike the words execute and implement and replace them with the word negotiate, and add a sentence at the end. The execution and implementation will follow pending approval from the City Council. Oh. Well.
Mr. President, are you finished? I'm sorry.
Council.
No, I didn't realize you didn't finish your report, so go ahead.
So at this time, I want to read my minority report.
Councilor.
That the City Council leave the housing development zone matter in committee until a legal opinion is obtained from the city solicitor relative to issuing a TIF for a project which had already been approved as a special permit, and finally, and a financial opinion from the CFO relative to the city's ability to pay for the high school if such a TIF is awarded. So that's my minority report, and I will call for a roll call on that.
Yep. Thank you, Councilor. And Madam Clerk, if we could...
Okay. Mr. President, I wasn't allowed to speak.
Sorry, Councilor.
All right, thanks. I don't know if procedurally if I can now. Is it okay? So, a couple of things. And maybe somebody can correct me. What we're voting on tonight is allowing the mayor to enter into negotiations. Whatever he negotiates still has to come back to this council. Is that correct? So the meaning of negotiations, the mayor could, and I'm just being theoretical here, say we're involved in affordable housing. maybe a contribution to our affordable housing trust fund through the commercial aspect of it. So I think we seem to be under the understanding that if we vote on this tonight, the mayor enters into negotiations, and then it's done. It still has to come to us. Now, as far as a financial analysis or a legal analysis, financially, we don't know what the mayor's going to negotiate. So we don't know financially what we're talking about. So then to have that would be the time, I think, to have the CFO, Richard Visquet, come up here and see how much of an impact his negotiations would have on what we're discussing here. So I think, I'm in favor of this, and because we still have a stopgap, we still are able to stop it, and we will have more information once negotiations are done. He may negotiate something that we're not even thinking of. So I don't think it's just negotiating how much money we're going to allow HYM to have. And a legal aspect, we could have Paul Capizzi come up here as negotiations and see about the special permit thing. So, but after we vote, but we still, the decision is ultimately up to us if we okay this. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor McKenna.
Thank you. What I got on my phone from HYM is the original amount of taxes before construction began, and they were paying $390,000. And then currently, their amount of yearly taxes right now is $4 million. And with the HDIP, the taxes requested is approved, if it's approved tonight, the amount of the yearly taxes paid will be $5 million. What they're asking is they're asking for $1 million off just one building for 20 years, and the mayor can negotiate that, but they're asking for $1 million off that, forgot the name, Potico, and not the rest of the development, just that building so they can get it started. For me, I've been on this council for 10 years. We've spent millions of dollars on crap. Really, on crap. We've wasted so much money in the years getting this and getting that and getting this and getting that, millions and millions of dollars. So if they're negotiating $1 million to get this, the largest development in this city, approved, I say we go for it. To get it going again. So.
Counselor, you just done? Okay. Madam Clerk,
Thank
if you
you.
don't mind having a roll call on the minority report.
On Counselor Zambuto's minority report, Counselor Argenzio.
Clarification of the vote, please.
Sure, so Counselor Zambuto had asked, do you have the language, Counselor Zambuto? I can summarize it. Shall the city council refer back to committee the HDIP matter until a legal opinion has been received from the city solicitor on whether or not a project that has already been permitted can receive a TIF afterwards, and that the CFO render a report on the ability for the city to pay for the high school if a TIF is awarded. Counselor Argenzio?
No.
No. Counselor Cogliandro?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Janino?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Guarino Sawaya?
No.
No. Counselor Haas?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Jaramillo? No. No. Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor McKenna?
No.
No. Counselor Novoselsky?
No.
No. Counselor Zambuto?
Yes.
Yes. And Council President Silvestri?
No.
The minority report fails.
Mr. President.
Original report.
The original report is now on the floor.
Mr.
Chair.
President, I'd like to add an amendment. That
Counselor.
after the words Mayor Patrick M. Keefe Jr., 2, strike the words execute and implement, and replace them with the word negotiate. And at the end of the same sentence, add a sentence that says, the execution and implementation will follow pending approval from the city council.
Thank you, Counselor. Tom?
If I could just speak on that for a moment. I don't disagree with the sentiment. What I would say is we have included the language verbatim from the state package that we're supposed to submit to them for their approval. I don't know what would happen if we made that amendment, but what I will say is if there's when there is an agreement to negotiate, it will be in front of this body irrespective of the language that's in that order. We're just following what's in the state's boilerplate guidelines to get this approved. So do with that what you will, but I just wanted to clarify that.
It doesn't sound like there'd be any harm to Councilor Jaramillo's, if that's the way it, Tom, if that's, what harm would that cause? Okay.
Well, the state provided that language for us to use in the adoption of the HDIP plan, so my concern would be if we use different language, when we bring it to them for their approval, they might kick it back and say, you didn't use our language, because they tend to be particular like that.
President, sorry, just a quick clarifying question. Is that
Counselor.
way whether Mr. Skorowski, sorry, hot ticket item today, man. Sorry. Have any other communities used this exact same language, or have they amended it? Do you know anything like that? Have any of your colleagues from any other communities?
So I can't speak to the amended language, but the language that the state includes is generally and that's what's in front of you, that's generally what's used to adopt an HDIP plan and that tax negotiation authority, if you will. But I think both by what the authority HDIP creates, and I would imagine the rules of the council related to any tax agreement would still have to go through the Ways and Means and get approved by the full council.
Thank you, Tom. I think I'd like a roll call on this. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay.
Are we voting on the amendment first?
It's a substitute motion.
Okay. We're going to replace the words to execute and implement and exchange it for the words to negotiate and add a sentence at the end that says the execution and implementation will follow pending approval from the City Council.
On the amendment by Councilor Jaramillo, Councilor Agenzio?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Cogliandro?
Abstain.
Abstain. Councilor Janino?
No.
No. Councilor Guarino Sawaya?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Haas?
No.
No. Councilor Jaramillo?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Kelly?
No.
No. Councilor McKenna?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Novoselsky?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Zambudo?
No.
No. And Council President Silvestri?
Yes.
Yes, the amendment is approved. Now, the motion as amended is now on the floor.
Roll call.
Shall the City Council adopt the following? 1, Housing Development Incentive Zone and proposed activities at Suffolk Downs. 2, Housing Development Incentive Zone and proposed activities at Green Street, Shirley Avenue. And 3, authorize Mayor Patrick M. Keefe, Jr. to negotiate housing development tax exemption agreements for housing development incentive projects in each respective zone. The implementation and execution will follow pending approval by the City Council.
Roll call.
Roll call, Councilor Agenzio?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Cogliandro?
Abstain.
Abstain. Councilor Janino?
No.
No. Councilor Guarino Sawaya?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Haas?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Jaramillo?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Kelly?
No.
No. Councilor McKenna?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Novoselsky?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Zambudo?
No.
No. And Council President Silvestri?
Yes.
Yes, the HDIP matter has been approved.
Mr. President,
Counselor.
request reconsideration, hoping that does not prevail.
You got to suspend the rules first.
Suspension of rules.
Motion to suspend the rules. All in favor, all opposed? So ordered. On reconsideration in hopes that it don't prevail, Madam Clerk?
Shall the city council reconsider this matter? Counselor Argenzio?
No.
No. Counselor Cogliandro?
Abstain.
Abstain. Counselor Janino?
No.
No. Counselor Guarino Sawaya?
No.
No. Counselor Haas?
No.
No. Counselor Jaramillo?
No.
No. Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor McKenna?
No.
No. Counselor Novoselsky?
No.
No. Counselor Zambudo?
Yes.
Yes. And Council President Silvestri?
Yeah, no.
No. Reconsideration fails.
Back to the regular order of business.
Communications, calendar item number 9, communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Jamie Jimenez to the Cultural Council. Refer to appointments?
Is it McKenna?
Huh?
Yep. We're good? Yes. All right. Okay. I don't even have his name in front of me. On to appointments.
Calendar item number 10, communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Deborah DiFilippo West to the Cultural Council.
Refer to appointments.
Motions, calendar item number 11, motion presented by Councilor Guarino Sawaya that the mayor direct the Department of Public Works in conjunction with the Traffic Division and Parking Department to implement various traffic and pedestrian safety measures along Revere Street and its intersecting streets. These measures aim to enhance public safety, improve traffic flow, and ensure pedestrian accessibility in high-traffic areas. First, install clearly defined parking space markers along Revere Street. This will optimize parking efficiency, reduce illegal or obstructive parking, and improve overall traffic flow in the area. Second, stop signs should be reinstalled. Signs were removed for sidewalk improvements on Oxford Street, Carlton Street, and Lee Street at the intersection of Revere Street. Third, the installation of a well-marked ADA-compliant pedestrian crosswalk and pedestrian-activated walk signal at the intersection of Revere Street and Broadway. Fourth, a double-sided speed limit sign posted between Broadway and American Legion Highway on Revere Street, and also from St. Anthony's Church to North Shore Road.
Councilor Guarino Sawaya.
The motion speaks for itself. I'd like to vote on this tonight, if that's possible.
Okay, Counselor, there's a couple things I just want to get clear before we vote on the ADA compliant, that would not have to go through traffic. I think the other ones are easy as slips, but I'm wondering if the third installation of a well-marked ADA compliant pedestrian crosswalk, activated signals, intersection in Revere Broadway, can we take these all up at once together? Like,
Councilor Guarino Sawaya did submit everything all as one motion. There wouldn't, if it's the will of the council, it can be separated if that's what you guys want to do.
okay, and if you can call a roll call.
On the motion as presented, Councilor Argenzio?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Cogliandro?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Janino?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Guarino Sawaya?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Haas?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Jaramillo?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Kelly?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor McKenna? Yes. Councilor Novoselsky is absent. Councilor Zambudo?
Yes.
Yes. And Council President Silvestri?
Yes.
Yes. The motion is approved. Calendar item number 12, motion presented by Councilor Guarino Sawaya, that the mayor request the appropriate department to adopt a policy requiring all apartment buildings within the city of Revere to prominently display accurate and up-to-date contact information for property management, as well as emergency contact details for the fire department. This information must be clearly posted in accessible common areas of each building to ensure tenants and first responders can quickly obtain vital information when needed. Additionally, that building and fire maintain a database containing this information for all apartment buildings, ensuring it is regularly reviewed and verified for accuracy. This measure is intended to enhance tenant safety, streamline communication, and promote accountability among property owners and managers.
Councilor Guarino Sawaya.
Thank you, Mr. President. I had an issue with two separate buildings on Revere Beach this past year. Actually, probably 6 months. I've been fighting with them, trying to get accurate information. They have the wrong information posted, and the residents don't know who to call. And when the city goes in there to take care of an issue, the number is wrong. So they can't call the contact people that are in there. They can't call the superintendent that's in the building. They can't call if it's a what's it called? If it's a building that is owned by owners, then there's an issue that the owners can't contact anybody. So I need to make sure that every one of the buildings gets a notification that states that they have to have the proper information posted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. All in favor, all opposed? So ordered.
Calendar item number 13, motion presented by Councilor Kelly, that the City Council award certificates of commendation to the detectives of the City of Revere Criminal Investigation Division, Special Investigation Unit, Suffolk County Sheriff's Department Task Force Officer, and the North Metro Special Operations Unit for their collaborative work in successfully targeting and shutting down 3 major drug operations in the City of Revere.
Councilor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Revere Police Department's Criminal Investigation Unit, Special Investigation Unit aided by Suffolk County Sheriff's Department Task Force Office and North Metro Special Operations Unit successfully targeted and shut down 3 major problematic houses in the city in 2024. These types of investigations are extremely difficult to conduct, yet they effectively culminated in the successful arrest and prosecution of several parties involved, the seizure of a substantial amount of narcotics, and 2 illegally possessed firearms. The Special Operations Unit assisted with ensuring the safe entry into all 3 dwellings and secured each scene to allow detectives to execute search warrants at each location. This is a prime example of outstanding police work, as well as the community, city government, and the police department working collectively to make the City of Revere safer for its residents and improve quality of life. Therefore, these members of the Criminal Investigation Division should absolutely be commended for their exceptional skills and tireless work ethic. Due to the importance of maintaining the confidentiality of all the detectives involved, however, I have been requested by Captain Levita to award the certificates in a private ceremony on behalf of the city. Of course, any city councilor wishing to attend would be welcome. I hope that the council votes favorably on these commendations tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. All in favor, all opposed? Aye. So ordered. And no further business. That concludes the February 3rd, 2025 City Council meeting.